Welcome to feasting, a celebration of life. The Hebrew scriptures in Proverbs 15:15 tell us that he who is of a merry heart has a continual feast. If we have a condition labeled as a merry heart, a joyful heart, God tells us that we will enjoy a continual feast.
Welcome to Feasting. I'm your host, Carrie Steele, joined here by Cindi Steele, who affectionately goes by Bubby. She's not only Bubby to her grandchildren, but really to the community at large, which leads me to say, Bubby, we are here in your kitchen. What are we cooking today?
Well, what do you expect? Challah, of course, that's Bubby's thing. I love challah. When I'm putting my hands in the dough, I'm creating as a vehicle to shed his love and spread his love to other people. So, are you ready?
I am beyond ready.
Okay, so we're gonna add about if you have little envelopes of yeast, just put one of those in. But this is 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. Okay. Do you mind if I give you a little Hebrew lesson?
No, please go ahead.
The word challah comes from the Hebrew word whole, which means common and ordinary. It's actually a mitzvah. Do you know what a mitzvah is?
No, please, what's a mitzvah?
A mitzvah is a commandment. Jewish women are commanded to do this, just like their husbands are commanded to pray. And a ritual prayer, they actually are commanded to make the bread. Okay, so we've got the eggs, and we're gonna add a 1/2 cup of oil, 1/2 cup of sugar, and a heaping teaspoon of salt, okay? So we are going to mix those up. You wanna mix that up for me?
Yes, please. So you were saying earlier it's very important to mix this by hand, right? That you shouldn't use any mixers or...
The kneading, let me tell you, a lot of recipes will say, oh, put it in your bread dough maker or your mixer. That's not challah. You have to have your hands in the dough. To sense God's presence when you're doing this, it's almost like an act of worship. So challah is like the beginning of it, you know?
All right, so how did I do on this?
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add our yeast mixture to that, okay? So we're gonna pour that in and make sure you've got all the stuff out of there. And then we'll set that aside. You go ahead and mix that up.
Do I want to get all the lumps out? Or
it's fine.
It's great. It's good as is?
Yes. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to let you take this.
Okay.
And one at a time, add a cup.
Perfect.
Just
so here we go.
Around a cup at a time.
No technique. Just toss it in there.
And we're going to stir.
All right. How many of these am I doing?
We have 9 cups of flour.
9 cups.
And
that was one.
Bread flour.
Bread flour.
Yes, bread flour is important. One at a time, just add about a cup.
All right. And then you've been making challah for the community where people have just been stopping by to pick up a loaf.
I just put up, if they can't get bread or whatever, I put challah loaves out in the front and they come by and grab them. So I'm gonna stir this up, but see how hard it's getting now? Mm-hmm. And it's getting kind of a shaggy dough. Mm-hmm. So here's where it gets a little messy. So I pour this out onto a solid surface.
Ooh.
That's why you don't want to use a bread machine or a mixer.
That really didn't take that long.
No, it's actually a very quick thing. And you feel the foundational kind of thing that God has given us to help us thrive and survive. And so you put your hands in it, and as you're doing it, many weeks, you know, I'll be singing or I'll be praising the Lord. I'll be just thanking him for having wonderful people like you in my life. And so we're just moving it around, and then little by little, just add a little bit of flour.
How little are we getting?
Yeah, like that. As you can imagine with grandkids,
it gets everywhere.
It's pretty messy.
So how long will we be doing this for?
You're going to do this for about 5 minutes.
Okay.
And it makes for a fluffier challah. So
again, the historical context of this challah.
it represents God's provision of a double portion of manna. That's why there are 2 loaves on the table at the Shabbat dinner. But the Israelites didn't have to go out and get more. He provided 2 portions.
How were you introduced to challah?
You know, I have known about it for so long, I don't even remember. Probably in Israel. We've been going to Israel for many, many years. And I do, as you know, do archaeological digs over there. But there's something about when you've got your hands in this dough and remembering God's provision. It's just an amazing, amazing thing.
And then for people who don't know, you can add things into challah, right?
Oh yeah, and like at Rosh Hashanah, you can turn it into a circle and actually put raisins or craisins or something on it, and it represents the king's crown as we crown God as king.
That's special.
So then we're going to take it and put it in a greased bowl.
Okay.
Okay, because it needs to rise.
Okay. What are we greasing it with?
I use canola oil, but just a tiny bit. And make sure when you turn it over that it has a little bit of oil on it. You just kind of turn it around. But ideally 6 hours.
Okay.
And you're going to just put a damp towel around it, and it's going to rise. And even that process is just a reminder of God's promise to Job 19, that in my flesh, I will see God. That's what Job said. We are going to see God. We are going to rise again. And right here, this is going to rise over the next 6 hours. I'm going to grab some pans that are lined with parchment, and that's important.
Gotcha.
So they won't burn. So we're going to do this, and of course, we haven't waited 6 hours, but I have another trusty friend here that's going to help us. So we're going to pull this off.
Oh, it smells amazing.
Yep.
I can smell it from here.
And this is what we are going to divide up and make into 6 different balls. So at this point, I grab this here. And Carrie, what I usually do is I just kind of eyeball it, okay?
Okay.
So I just kind of do a little karate chop and divide that in half.
Okay.
And then I'm going to take this one, do the same thing, except divide it in 3 parts, okay? 1, 2, 3, okay? And so we'll put that right there.
3 balls.
And then this one. Now, you can make small challah. I make challah rolls. You can do all kinds of things. This is how I typically do it. So divide this one and grab this, and those go for here.
All right.
Now, this is the part. Now, if you look, see this guy's really little. So we want to take a little bit of him, add it to this one. Just kind of make sure they're somewhat even.
Okay.
And then we're going to take this, and literally we're just going to roll it.
So while you're rolling, you have been attending seminary, and I would love to hear you share more about what that adventure has been like.
Yeah, I've been studying Hebrew for 2 years in a very, very stringent program, and it has changed my life, biblical Hebrew. So I'm in my 3rd year of Hebrew studies. So we're going to grab the 3 ropes, pinch it at one end, and then we're going to start lifting. What I like to do is make sure the strand lifts up over. See how I'm doing that? And I lift it and go from the outside in to the middle, and the outside in. Okay, so we've let these raise for 30 minutes.
Okay.
And we're going to now give them an egg wash. I've preheated the oven to 350, okay? So I'm gonna let you do this. This is 1 egg with a splash of water. So we're gonna just take a brush and just brush them like that.
So we're gonna do this to both?
Yes, because this is what will make them golden. We're going to set this aside. I'm going to do one kind of a little bit different thing.
Okay.
Here, I'm going to add some sesame seeds. You can add poppy seeds. You can actually do lots of different things. I've put chocolate chips.
Oh, that one's one of our favorites.
Yeah, so we're going to sprinkle the sesame seeds on this. And then we're going to pop these guys in the oven for, I'm going to say about 30 minutes, but you kind of, it depends on your oven, however long it takes. So if you'll hand me the other one, we'll put it in the oven and let these bake. And then I have some that I made earlier, and I'll bring out the finished product right here. And as you can see, the golden color, I mean, it just glorifies our Creator. I mean, it just does. And you know, I've thought many times, when I make challah, I feel His pleasure.
That's so amazing.
And the only thing left is to get a knife and give you a bite.
Well, thank you. While you grab that knife, I just wanted to thank you again for teaching me your friend's recipe. Out of all the recipes you've tried, I mean, this is just incredibly special. It's been a blessing to learn this. And now I can make this for my grandkids.
Sure. I'm glad to pass it on. So I'm going to use this serrated knife to cut it. And just so you can
Ooh, a nice
see
big piece.
what it looks like on the inside. So this is the challah.
So I'll take one piece and you'll take one piece?
Yeah, absolutely. And just so you know, this makes the best French bread ever. So,
well, cheers.
Cheers to you.
My name is Aviva, and I am born and raised from Toronto, Canada.
My name is Angela Smith, and I hail from the great state of Arizona.
I grew up in a Jewish home, very culturally Jewish.
I was not brought up Jewish. My mom was Italian, raised Catholic, and then became a believer in Jesus, like more relationship with Jesus when I was just in her stomach.
My parents became believers in Jesus when I was 5, and my older sister was 8. So some of my first memories are being in a congregational setting.
And my dad is African American and Native American, so did not grow up in a Jewish home, but had some entrance into Jewish life because when my mom became a believer in Jesus, she heard very quickly about the Jewish roots of her faith. And so she began to search that out.
There was always an overtone and an undercurrent in my life that I was Jewish, but mainly I grew up believing that Jesus was my Messiah, but no connection necessarily to my heritage and my identity.
I would say I was about in my early 20s, and I had gone to a Christian bookstore and just felt like I needed a deeper connection with God and was just kind of prayerfully looking at the books on the shelf. And one book stood out to me. It was called God's Appointed Times. And so I pulled it off the shelf and just started to read, and it was about Shabbat and the holidays. And I just thought, why haven't I been celebrating these things? These are in the Bible. Like, why have I been celebrating all these other holidays and not the ones that Jesus actually celebrated?
If God created Shabbat, He must know better than I do. So I might want to look into it and see what He had intended for us. Yeah.
So later on, I became a part of a greater community that celebrated Shabbat. And so then I started to celebrate with other people. So Jewish people would invite me in, and I'd get to learn their traditions around Shabbat, and it became more of a community event, which made things so much more rich for me, because that date day with the Lord, it's a set apart time, yet the two greatest commandments are love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So then doing it with the community just added to that dimension of all of us celebrating together and being in community together.
But I often have Gentiles over for Shabbat, and one of my favorite things to share with them, and I really mean it with all my heart and soul, is that the house looks better with you in it. And Shabbat is really a gift of time, and it's a gift that God gave us when He created the earth. God didn't need to rest, but He knew His creation, His children would.
I would say there's two aspects of Shabbat that have impacted me the most. One is in Isaiah, it talks about, the prophet says, so blessed are the ones that celebrate Shabbat, including the foreigner that joins himself to the Lord to keep and set apart the Shabbat and, kind of celebrate with God's people. And so for me, as a non-Jewish person, that is like, it's just really cool that even the Jewish prophet Isaiah would prophesy of a day that even non-Jewish people are going to be celebrating Shabbat in community with God's people. And that would be a testimony to the world. It even says, like, I will give those foreigners, the non-Jewish people, a place in my house of prayer.
The ways that I prepare for Shabbat is I'll make challah, or I'll think about a menu, and I also think about who will hopefully join me around the table. And that's another beautiful thing, and that is that Shabbat is not so much, although it's a distinctive gift that I believe God stewarded and gave Jewish people to do, in a pattern and a rhythm and a cycle that he used the people of Israel to teach us through, and for us to learn about. This is something that each one can celebrate every week.
Challah is a highlight of Shabbat, for sure, especially when my roommate Aviva makes challah. She rocks the challah making. So it's just, it's delicious. It pulls apart. It's like steamy when you open, you're tearing it apart and passing it around, remembering that this is the bread that God brought forth from the earth. We don't have to provide it for ourselves on Shabbat. This is a double portion, and we salt it. I remember one time we had like all kinds of different flavored salts that I think my roommate had brought from Israel, and we just, you spend time dipping in the different flavors of salt, and Kerrygold butter is a must for challah.
It's such an honor to share part of my culture and heritage with them, but also it's just a neat opportunity for people to come. Usually after a long week, a long day, it's Friday night, and to come and to stay and to linger, and there's no appointed time to leave. And so I love to share and teach a little bit and just break bread with Gentiles that come. And I'm always really touched and moved when people, they have such earnest and open-hearted questions about, about Jewish lifestyle and the connection to also Messiah and why I observe it. And the best way to learn is to do. And so Shabbat and opening our home is a great entry point for that.
So my second favorite thing about Shabbat, or the most meaningful, is that it's a time different than any other time, kind of a sanctuary in time that is set apart just for us to rest. I am a type A, perfectionist person. I want to go and do all the time. And Shabbat is an invitation to stop doing whatever it is that I'm doing and to acknowledge that God is still running the universe. I don't need to. I can just relax and take a deep breath and remember what he did, even as the creator of the universe, who worked, but then he rested. And so that's the second most meaningful thing, I think, about Shabbat for me.
I think of Shabbat really as an open invitation, and he uses the table, using food, using the decor, the flowers, the wine, the company. All of these things come together and create a moment that is building friendship, it's building relationship, but also it's a time to take a deep breath and just say, God, I thank you for all the good things this week. I thank you for all the challenging things this week. And we just want to meet with you tonight. And I see it as an intersection and a place every week that God built into the cycle of the week for us to meet with him and meet with one another. And so this is a place in when I was in my early 20s, that I felt like this was a place of connection with God, but also with my people.
So the reason that we dip our challah in salt on Shabbat is because salt is a preservative, and it reminds us of how God has preserved the Jewish people, how he's preserved Israel throughout time and has not abandoned them. They haven't been destroyed. They are still a people, and it testifies to his promises.
Sabbath is the celebration of a day ceasing from labor. But much more than that, Sabbath is a day of delighting in God. The Jewish prophet Zephaniah spoke to the Jewish people, In Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 17, we read that God, your Lord, is in the midst of you, the mighty one. He will save. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you with his love. He will rejoice over you with singing. Shabbat Shalom.